Yes, now it's recording. Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we have the great privilege to have Elana Freeland, a very prolific writer and public speaker, with us. She has written many books and she is in the process to write another one that also deals with, in a larger sense, with geoengineering, except it will be about bioengineering. And I'm very happy to have her here. So Elana Freeland, welcome to Night Flight.
Thank you for having me back.
Elana, how is the new book coming?
Well, as I was telling you before we went on the air, I'm not sleeping well. I find I'm biting my nails. I'm overwrought. I'm overwrought. For a while, for a few months, I was going over things in my mind and rearranging my files. I have many, many files. And as I rearrange them, I can then rearrange my mind about how to approach the topic. And the topic for this will be synthetic biology and transhumanism. And they go together. They also come out of the previous two books on geoengineering that I've done. It's as though each book I write, I have a whole new process of discovery. I'm like pulling up one layer after another of this, supposedly, if you believe the New York Times or the Washington Post or the British press, you think that geoengineering is simply solar radiation management, SRM, that they're having to manage this global warming crisis, this climate change crisis. But really, the geoengineering is huge and multifaceted. And all of that is being hidden from the public. So I spent the second book, Under an Ionized Sky, going over in detail the second half of that title, which was From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown, going over the infrastructure of this space fence. This is a Lockheed Martin project. It is not new. We had the space fence back in the 80s when we had the Strategic Defense Initiative, the SDI, or we called it familiarly Star Wars. And so in that second book, I explain how the infrastructure is set up on the ground and in lower Earth orbit, LEO they call it, or near Earth orbit, NEO. And that we are sort of sandwiched between these infrastructures, one on the ground and one in the sky, with satellites, the sounding rockets, the International Space Station, and more importantly, the debris that the jets and rockets and drones are spewing for conductivity. Wireless conductivity, of which there are many, many programs absolutely dependent upon this wireless condition. So all that led me deeper into the tiny world of nanoparticles, because everything being spewed by this aerosol delivery system is on a nano scale. And for your listeners who don't know, a nano or a nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. So we're talking submicron. We're talking tiny, 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 not the tiniest, I might add. Below that will be the pico and 6 or 7 other categories. So basically, when you begin to read the literature on nanotechnology, you discover that really this nanoscale, even though it's all the nanotechnology is built of nanomaterials from the periodic table. I mean, you know, these are things we have here on the Earth. But when they get that small, and you're talking about, okay, you're talking about heavy metals, that'd be all the way aluminum, barium, strontium, the usual culprits, lithium, titanium, chromium, and others. That's all about the conductivity, to keep particulate matter aloft, like above the earth, and then some of it will filter down into our atmosphere and keeping it in our atmosphere as well. Because if you're going to have wireless operations, you're talking radio waves, microwaves, you're going to need to have particulate matter. You can't really, these waves don't work well in a vacuum. They don't work well in clear air, so to call them. So we have these nanoparticles that are just there for conductivity, primarily. Then we have nanosensors. And NASA and other agencies have been very forthcoming in the mainstream media, talking about leaving trillions and trillions of nanosensors high in the stratosphere, in the upper atmosphere. And just picture when the rockets go up. You see this rocket, you see all this turbulence below as it's firing up, and then you see it going up in its parabolic path, and then spewing behind it is masses of particulates, moisture, fuel, whatever. Those nanos are coming out the jet or the rocket are simply part of the fuel system in general. And then there's this other part where they get up there high up in the stratosphere, and then they release these sensors. And these sensors are basically transceivers. They receive and they transmit information from ground level, what I call the laptop boys. The guys on their laptops, their monitors busy, and they're following the trajectory of the rocket. They're following how the spewing of these nano sensors is working, how much particles per inch, particles per meter, whatever it is. So then there's those, and then along with those are just sheer microprocessors, which is tiny nanoscale, if you can imagine, nanoscale computers. That also are there for communications and perhaps analyzing data, analyzing what the sensors are picking up. Meanwhile, that data and whatever the microprocessors are communicating down to the earth, again, wirelessly, going down to the earth and being crunched by supercomputers, maybe quantum computers like D-Wave. And so this constant data stream between the upper atmosphere and here. Now down here, whatever is not getting caught up of the nanoscale particles up in space, up in the stratosphere, whatever is not getting caught in the centrifugal force of the Earth turning, spinning, comes down to us. Now, where some of those particles end up that are spinning, but they sort of settle eventually right around the widest girth of the Earth, which is at the equator. And they're spinning around the equator, just picture that, until there's so much heavy metal there on a nanoscale, so many sensors, so much nano-sized debris, it's all sort of compacting around the Earth in a ring. And if you look at the cover of my book, Under an Ionized Sky, you'll see that the illustration is of an Earth with a ring around it like Saturn. And so that is very crucial to understanding the space fence, because that ring is really I have to call it, I don't know whether I should call it a communications device or an amplifier, a condenser perhaps. There are all sorts of electrical terms I can use. Once I asked Billy Hayes, who was my advisor through the whole Under an Ionized Sky book. He's the HAARP man. He's the guy that has been up in over 240 installations of this ground infrastructure of the space fence. I asked Billy, what is the purpose of that ring forming around the planet? And he agreed it's communications and said if he were to rename it, he'd call it a CD-ROM. So a CD-ROM, we don't really use them that much anymore, but they're reservoirs of data. And that's in a way how I think of the ring forming around the planet. But imagine the resonance between the ring around the planet, we're spinning, there's all sorts of activity up there, and then we're down here on the Earth, surrounded by the infrastructure that the Under an Ionized Sky goes deeply into. And so there's a resonance going on in what's called the Schumann well, the well between, in a way, between our ionosphere and us on the surface. So there's a resonance chamber going on, there's sound. This affects our whole nervous system. This affects everything about us. So on a large scale even of this technology, we're being impacted. Then there's what we're breathing. Now we're breathing those little nano guys that are coming down. We're taking them into our lungs, and then they're being assimilated through our tissue, through the capillaries, into our blood system. And then they're moving through the blood system, and eventually many of them end up going through the blood-brain barrier and are in our brain. So now we have the making of a sort of an antenna, our body as an antenna, our body as a tower, like the cell towers that we see around us. And so we've been electrified more by the fact that we're breathing in these conductive particles, et cetera. So I find myself, after I realize all of this, of how it works, and that we're surrounded by wireless technology, and what I would call the space fence on the ground, and what I do call it in the book, Under an Ionized Sky, that would be all the way from starting with your cell phone. I don't own one because I consider it a military weapon. Every piece of electromagnetic equipment we're so fond of, our TVs, our computers, our cell phones, etc., all came from the military. They had it 1 to 2 generations before they allowed us to have it. And they have the frequencies for all of our devices. We have none of their frequencies. So that's our condition on a sort of large scale. We're surrounded by the cell towers. We're surrounded by the 60 hertz in America. In where you are, it's 50 hertz in the walls. We are surrounded by radar installations. Some of them are called NEXRADs. They're like big golf balls. And these are used pretty much here in the States for moving weather systems from the West Coast to the East Coast. We have wind farms filled with wind turbines, all of which are sort of pumping and pulsing in the earth. We have fracking wells for oil reserves, crude oil, and those two are pulsing and pumping. We have all sorts of military radar installations, on our university campuses, on military bases. I mean, everywhere. I mean, we are so loaded in America with military. So all of these devices, and there are more, all of these devices are calibrated to work together. Now, what that means is, yes, it could be, because you have them calibrated to be pulsing the same frequency together, you have a real resonance set up, and you can weaponize that resonance very easily. You can also use a certain calibration for a certain geographic area, where you can then just operate on that, because everything is calibrated to work together, and you can resonate it and, you know, create an earthquake, create a tornado, create a very destructive storm system with lots of flooding, whatever. So that's sort of the space fence. That's the real space fence. If you listen to Lockheed Martin, they make you think it's just a couple of installations that are, you know, have everything pointed to the sky and are sort of counting the debris, 1, 2, 3, you know, old satellites that have fallen apart, and that, like, they're garbage collectors, and that they're watching for missiles or meteors coming from wherever. But this is about far more than that, far, far, far more than that. In fact, you know, I was taught by Clifford Carnicom, my independent scientist friend, who has been involved in this from day one, especially the geoengineering back in the late 90s. There are 7 operations, 7 core category operations going on through the geoengineering. And, you know, all the way from, yes, the weather engineering, and then the next one is the chemical and electromagnetic atmospheric operations, the planetary geophysical operations, the directed energy warfare operations, the surveillance and neural operations, and the biological transhumanism operations. And one I left out here, but the other one is the exotic propulsion craft operation, because, you know, the UFOs, so called. So there are 7 huge categories of operations going on. And why? Because there's a secret space program going on, and it has been going on for decades, since John Kennedy was gotten rid of, and we have been able to pursue a weaponized space age, unlike the one he was foreseeing of working with other nations and wonderful stepping off the planet sort of thing. Pretty naive, I think he was. But this secret space program, not only has Catherine Austin Fitts made clear that at least $21 trillion is missing from the American budget. Recently, I was listening to one of her interviews, and I think she said it was 60 billion now they have found is missing. So a lot of black money, a lot of lying, deception, subterfuge, murder, and mayhem have gone into this very secret weaponized space program. And where this whole thing I've been describing and we fit in is that this is all part of their absolute objective being to completely control planet Earth. And Joseph Farrell spelled this out in his book, Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations, when quoting Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev, who said that for any civilization that wants to be serious about a true space age, about the governance of a true space age, he said the first step is full spectrum dominance over the planet. And planetary control to Kardashev and other astrophysicists would mean full spectrum dominance. I mean, total. That doesn't just mean military weapons and missiles and things that we know are military. No, it's about the militarization of all of life, so that all of the cultural part of life, the human biology, all of the life forms on the planet, all of this, the weather for sure, obviously, all of this has to be under absolute control before you can go on to the second phase. And the second phase, which we have begun, and it may be a surprise to your listeners if they understand what I'm saying. The second phase is control over our star and its systems. And our star is the sun. And we are definitely in the process of controlling the sun, of taking energy from it through the Birkeland currents, through the solar panels on satellites that we've got going up there. I was seeing today on my Facebook that people are complaining about President Trump putting a tariff on solar panels. That is why, because the government wants to control all of the energy sources, and that certainly includes solar panels. So, so we have begun to look for ways to use the Tesla technology. This is a real Tesla age we're in. Tesla himself said that we could actually bring energy from the sun straight to planet Earth and use the solar energy in a variety of ways. So that has already started. So we're on phase 2 and phase 1 of Kardashev's model. The third and last phase, which seems far in the future, but look what's happening now. This was far in the future. And that is control over the galaxy and its systems. Now let's look at that word just for a moment, that its systems, you know, and our star and its systems. One of the things that they have learned a great deal about in this whole geoengineering thing that they claim hasn't been going on, but has been going on for at least 2 decades intensely, is that we have this fourth state of matter, plasma. We now have clouds. When people look up at the clouds, they may think that they're looking at clouds just like they've always been. No, not so. These are mainly plasma clouds. These are mainly dry, chemicalized, radio frequencied masses of matter, sort of between a gas and matter. And because the clouds are plasma, they are really experimenting a lot with plasma in general, because that has to do with that third phase of control over the galaxy's systems. And I'm not going to go deeply into that, but I just want to point out that many of the oohs and ahs and wonders in the sky that we're seeing now, you know, strange sunsets, you know, double suns in the sky, because, you know, they've created a plasma mirror in the sky that they can adjust to make it look
everybody is yelling Nibiru.
Yes, yeah, right. And then people make up Planet X, Nibiru, all that. Many of these miracles in the sky are not due to aliens, UFOs, you know, being run by off-planet species. They really are this technology, and it is typical, as you know, of the American government that just as in the 50s and 60s, they jazzed up the alien thing to cover a lot of things they were doing, not nearly as advanced as they are now, but they were still pursuing things that they didn't want the public to know. So really, people need to think twice, and you know, in this idea of, well, we can't we just don't have, we could not possibly have that kind of technology without help. Well, I don't know about that. I think that human beings are perhaps more clever than a lot of people think. And that certainly has been the mainstream media that has been controlled by the US mainstream media has been controlled by the CIA in America since the 70s under Operation Mockingbird, right? But I mean, in this country, we have the First Amendment, so everybody thinks freedom of the press, whereas other countries don't have that Bill of Rights, making you believe an illusion that you have this freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of anything. But you know, Americans, it takes us a long time to admit that our illusions are that, and not really the way it is.
Yeah, here in Germany, after the Second World War, the media outlets had to get their licenses from the CIA.
Yes, because Germany supposedly lost the war, which, by the way, I do not believe. I think we have a lot of the Third Reich here in America right now. And people just don't realize it. They haven't done the historical step-by-step following the progression of this, which I have done. But Germany was rebuilt, just like Japan was rebuilt after the World War II. And it was the CIA, and that would be Alan Dulles, who was in charge of all of that. All right, so the space age is going on right now. They're more and more making it public. President Trump reestablished, when he came into office, he reestablished the National Space Council. Now he's created a 6th branch of the US military, as if we need more, which is, I think he calls it the Space Force. Is that what he calls it? So slowly it's coming out that we are in a space age. And we're the ones who are, initially I thought, oh, okay, so we're collateral damage for this space age. But now I am not thinking that anymore. I'm thinking we are definitely being experimented on for a transhumanist attempt to create a human being that is connected to a machine, what's here we call BCI, brain-computer interface, so that we feasibly could find our way, for one thing, off planet through the Van Allen belts, which are very radiation heavy. And the human body, unless it's covered with lead, simply cannot pass that barrier, has not been able to. That's why we know the moonshot was nonsense. And so now the attempt to create a human being who's basically a cyborg, a robotic type of human being on some level, if not an AI system that certainly can go through the Van Allen belts, but they find, you know, they're struggling to make the AI exactly like a human being, but it's very hard to get the AI to understand feelings, sensory data on a certain scale. So I'm sure they're pretty flustered over that and still attempting to do it. But right now, what they're doing, I feel, is they are dousing us with these nanoparticles that we're having to breathe. Every breath, you know, millions and millions of nanoparticles are coming in. And if anyone wants to get just a glimpse of what I'm talking about, they can buy one of these little tiny microscopes. I bought one on the internet for $7. It looks like this. And it has an LED light. It has a UV light, 60 power. And I can go into a even an organic vegetable market, and turn this on with my LED and look through the microscope, and I will see millions of fibers, millions, millions, millions. And we are breathing these. And inside that fiber, the fiber itself probably is a polymer of some sort, but inside the fiber, Clifford Carnicom proved years ago that one of the things that's in there is morgellons, a pathogen, a bacteria basically that has been weaponized. He has managed to isolate the DNA, and now is having all sorts of trouble not being allowed to patent it because the patent office is controlled. So he's working his work with that, and I'm working my work, and we're of course friends, and so we definitely have conversations. But for me, what I'm doing now, besides writing this next piece of the puzzle, which has to do, as I read to you, with the biological transhumanism operation, is I'm trying to prepare people for taking care of their immune system. That certainly has been pretty trashed, would be a wonderful American use of that noun. Our immune system has been trashed by the junk food that America is known for, not something I'd want to be known for. And we need to bolster our immune system because the introduction of 5G and the millimeter waves and the satellites that go with it, with masses of more and more radiation pouring down on us, we need to have that immune system. I mean, it's, when you think about the immune system, I mean, a lot of people don't study biology, but, and I did as an undergrad, but I have all these years followed a Chinese medicine. I studied it for 6 years, and I've followed a diet that basically is out of not Western medicine and where vitamins and minerals and things, but out of Chinese medicine, which is yin yang, which is acid alkaline. You realize that immune system is probably millions of years old and is one of the most brilliant invisible forces in our body. And instead, and now we're being just pummeled by this debris, most of it unnatural, most of it genetically engineered or just engineered. And we're breathing this in, and our immune system simply does not recognize these as an assault. It has no idea. Part of it is the nano scale, but part of it is that the combinations are simply unknown. So the question to me is, if we take care of our immune system by eating healthy food, making sure that we sleep in areas where microwave and radio waves are at a minimal, making sure our beds are not acting as metal antennas, all sorts of things that we need to really now take up in earnest if we want to live through this time of transition. What we can then possibly see the day when our immune system figures all this out and begins to defend us, because it has now recognized the signature of what these things are that are coming into our bodies every day. So that's sort of what I'm concentrating on in talks and radio interviews, is to help people see that their lifestyle may have to change if they expect to live through this without being, taking all our money and giving it to the big pharma and medical industry and living with fear and anxiety the rest of our lives. I mean, That seems to be a very simple choice, that you can decide that you're going to take your lifestyle in hand. And though you love nothing better than sitting on the couch and watching a good movie and eating a quart of ice cream, that maybe you don't want to do that anymore. Maybe you want to think about that. So that's kind of the direction I'm taking now as I do the talks. But in the writing, this is going to be quite a different book from the other two. In the other two, just by the dint of the number of footnotes, you can tell that I was very serious about proving every nitpicking thing I was saying. And now I feel I have done that. I have played that academic game to the degree I'm willing to play it. I have discovered how this big system works, at least at this point. And now I'm going to go more deeply into several things that have to do with the synthetic biology and the nanotechnology, the transhumanist thrust that this all represents to change us, to make us into something we are not, we have not been, and I, for one, do not want to be, by using our weaponized environment to do it. I remember when I used to wonder how they were going to do this transhumanist shift without vaccinating all of us, without dragging all of us into hospitals and clinics. And now I know they're doing it through an aerosol delivery system, a genetically modified organism seed system, and the vaccinations that they're hitting us with as soon as we enter life, on a scale that is just absolutely extraordinary. And anyone who knows any history at all knows cannot possibly make any sense for hygiene of protecting a child's health. So all of this, I see how it works now. Now, what I want to do in this book is I want to start crossing over. I want to increase our vocabulary and increase our ability to conceptualize what scale this is happening on. This is, yes, it is biological, but just as molecular biology is now being converted into digital biology, in other words, we are BCIs, we are brain-computer interfaces, and we're being plugged into a wireless environment by virtue of entities inside of us that are being communicated with on a scale that would probably shock people if they realized to what degree, here in America we call them fusion centers, to what degree the laptop boys sitting in fusion centers can zero right in on our biology, on our respiration rate, on our heart rate, on the nano presence, the nanotechnology presence in our body, in our brain. You would be amazed what they can do now that they have been working so feverishly to do this full spectrum dominance on everything on Earth. So now I want to look at some concepts that will help us to raise our consciousness. That's what I want. I want to raise the consciousness. We're not going to just feel apologetic that we don't have the same terms and the same PhDs that are being churned out by our universities with masses of disinformation to these people paying for these educations. I really need to forewarn them. It's probably the same in Europe. There are, in a way, I can simplify it by saying there are two levels of science. There's the science for the masses, which is not the science being used by the elite. And the elite, if I were to say who I would think would be the elite science organization, it would it would have to be what are called the Jason Group. And the Jason Group has been around a long time. It's been secret. It is very bright people who are going with the program. And they are given access to papers, patents, technology from the ages, from back to Egypt, possibly. Because these secret societies that President Kennedy spoke up against just a few weeks before he was eliminated, these secret societies have kept many things separate. I remember when the US under George W. Bush, the second Bush, was marching into Babylon, into Baghdad. And the first reports came that the museum had been, that people had stolen a lot of artifacts from the museum. My first thought was, oh, that was the CIA. They were in there getting the goods, because a lot of these wars, I mean, and I would have to add Ukraine. When we went into Ukraine, along with various European allies, so-called, or partners in crime is really what I call them, then, you know, we again took artifacts that have to do with ancient civilizations' technologies. And to look at a linear view that we're just, you know, it's more and more progress. Sorry, folks, that's not really how this works. You know, as Ecclesiastes said, there's nothing new under the sun. In a way, he was right when it came to technology. So now they have a lot of technology that they've been sort of hovering over and hiding in caches around the world, that now that the atmosphere is ionized, is electrified, is like an antenna, like a battery, now all of these things can come out, and you give them to your gifted science people, many of whom are quite young, because more and more of the youths coming in to life are prepared for technology. This is a technological age. And so for people to simply say, well, I never liked science in high school, so I don't like it now, it's too much work, or whatever, or I'm not going to get a PhD in it. To tell you the truth, I don't think there's anywhere you can go other than my book, Under an Ionized Sky, to see half of what's going on now. There is no university that has access to this. This is a national security classified program. And I certainly had to scotch tape together and collage my way through masses and masses of disparate data in order to understand what the whole picture was. So that's kind of the era we're in. Let's accept it. This is very unique and filled with opportunity for those who know how to research, can concentrate, aren't afraid of going against status quo, and really understand what is going on with this technology. So I'm going to go into the tiny world in a way, but not without some new concepts that I want. I want plasma in my tool belt. I want the nanotech in my tool belt. I want to really take a look at these terms that are being bandied about: neuroscience, bioengineering, synthetic biology, all of these, you know, epigenetics, ontogenetics, all of these new terms that are being thrown at us in multiples. I want to unlock all those, really look at how, I'm not even going to spend much time on proving that we are being bioengineered with geoengineering. I will spend some time on it by looking at the smart city being set up for us to understand what the smart city really is. It is not what it seems, I'll put it that way. It is not, does not have your well-being and your future success at all in mind. It's a testing ground, it's a proving ground for total control over planet Earth. So we'll take a look at that. I want to go into some esoteric things. As you know, you probably remember I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner. I'm going to go into some Steiner concepts. I did go into some of the concepts in the previous book. And this time I'm going to go further. I'm going to look at that crossing over in quantum physics between the material and the immaterial, the what I like to call the physics and the metaphysics. That, you know, like, what is thought? What is thought? Thought is not produced by the brain. The brain is simply the jumping off point, you might call it. So, so to really take a look at these and get a new nomenclature of our own that we can use to understand what is going on and go further than our masters have intended us to. But for that, we need a new language. It's like, I think it was, I don't remember, I think it was Einstein said, you can't solve a problem
on the same level that you created it.
Exactly. So I want to take us to another level, and so our imagination is quickened, and we begin to think of these things maybe from more of a 360 degree rather than just waiting for our experts to spit out things that we're supposed to memorize and agree with, and see, you know, to just help prepare people. I'm hoping this will be the last book that I do. I can't imagine that there would always be more to say, but I plan that this book will develop the ideas that have occurred to me through writing the other two books, and that will help people to see that you don't have to be afraid if you stop waiting for the experts to tell you what is true and what is not true. If you get your thinking kind of cranked up again and go beyond that idea that, you know, you simply don't have a scientific mind, you don't have a whatever kind of mind. And necessity is the mother of invention, and we definitely have a necessity now to learn about this technology, not out of just personal pleasure or, yeah, I'm good at science. No, it's really about they're gonna wreck humanity if we continue to allow it. They're gonna turn us into machines, and they have the tools now. I see, with this having weaponized our environment, they have the tools by which they can do this very readily, especially for people who have very low consciousness, who are not cutting edge, not particularly educated, who sort of go along to get along. These people are particularly at risk. They have the technology. I mean, already people are carrying around their cell phones and addicted to them. And these cell phones are, you know, used to pulse you with thoughts and emotions that are not really yours. And you need to understand that this is a wonderful thing for the masters of the universe that want to take over our planet and then the galaxy. So you know, think of all the other things around you.
Yeah, I have heard that the new apartment buildings in the US will have inbuilt Alexas. So you will not have to buy an Alexa, and it will probably be in the wall or somewhere. It will not be standing around.
In the bathroom.
Bathroom, bedroom,
yeah,
kitchen.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of things in and those are UN spawned regulations, by the way. Yeah, it's, I think Deborah Tavares is the one who knows the most about that. She's her profession, she and her husband are builders. They build homes, and they live in Santa Rosa, California. So they've witnessed all the fires that have happened there. They've been right there looking at building permits, going down to the Department of Planning at the city government and county government level. They're very good at that, and that is exactly how it is. That you're going to be allowed to live in these places. Yeah, that's how I think of it. I am a gypsy. I don't know how many times I've moved in the last 10 years, at least, well, maybe 10, maybe more. And now I'm in an apartment building, which is federal, and then city and county, public monies, public housing. I'm here. I have the low income of the aging senior now, the aging 60s person. And I'm very happy because it's very cheap, but I'm also happy because I'm around people that I normally am not around. And I can see what's going on at a very different socioeconomic level than I've paid attention to for quite a few years. All of these new places, and this is pretty new. This is, I've got a meter that's reading. It's reading for smoke, a smoke alarm, right? And that, of course, has a microphone in it. I hope everybody knows that. And I would gladly take the battery out if it weren't connected to a central place where they will immediately come out and ask me why it's not working, right? So I can't unplug that. And then there's one that's looking at the gas composition of the air to make sure that it's the right consistency, and that I'm not going to asphyxiate myself somehow. And then there's sprinklers. What else is there? I always assume that all of these are actually cameras in disguise and microphones in disguise would be my assumption, in case they ever need to really check up on me, right? So that's the smart city mentality. That comes before people. The structure of the full spectrum dominance and the space fence lockdown. The structure comes first, then the people are fitted into the structure, and that's a complete inversion from 50 years ago when I was young. How we looked at people, and we looked at democratic society. It's all inverted now. It's already done. There is no way to throw it off like a yoke. Now we're going to have to work through this one. And the beginning of that has to be our health. We have to maintain our immune system. And so that's why I'm concentrating so heavily on that. Recently, a friend who is friends with the Kennedys asked me if I would write a letter to Robert Kennedy Jr., who is, as you know, really fighting against vaccinations, because I wanted him to know that the aluminum in these autism kids and Alzheimer adults is really not just from the vaccinations, the adjuvant, it's from the sky. Mm. And so many of these excellent people doing such great work on health issues are completely unaware of this. And that needs to be amended. They need to have the whole picture. So, it's at that phase where more and more people are waking up, more and more people are hearing about my book or me or all the talks or whatever, but that this is essential, that we share information. It's a true democratic movement without being marching in the streets. We're sort of marching on the internet is kind of how I look at it. And we need to really listen to each other. And it's hard because everybody's busy. There's this issue and this issue and this and this and this and this. And every day is more. And it's moving at an incredible pace.
Yeah, it's designed like that. so that we are always exhausted.
Exactly. And they attempt to continue to create division among us.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I think the hardest part for me is the PhDs who feel that their training and their knowledge is so superior to a layperson like myself, who's simply smart and knows how to research. You know, I have a master's in historical research. So, you know, they're making an assumption that the PhD program has given them access to the real facts, when the truth is that most PhD programs are very tightly constrained to create PhDs who think with blinders on the sides, and really can't go beyond that, or else they won't have a peer-reviewed paper, or they won't be able to, you know, be respected in their career, or that their university post will be taken from them. I mean, it's a real quandary for the PhDs. I mean, I have a couple of PhD scientists who are very friendly with me now that they realize what danger they and their families are in. So, you know, it's a process.
Yeah. I guess what is puzzling to many people, or what is hard to wrap their minds around, is how carelessly, you know, human beings are used as guinea pigs. And I think a lot of people check out at that point. They think, I would not do that to other people, so my government or the military or whoever would not do that to me as well. Have you ever entertained the idea that there might be a layer of non-human entities being involved in that?
Well, I just don't see any reason to import them.
Okay. But I get that.
But I'll tell you something that is similar to it that I do subscribe to, and that is, did you by any chance see the video of Ronald Bernard, the banker who? Yes, and his confession of having put his conscience on ice, as he said. That he had been told by a banking associate that if he could put his conscience on ice, then he could make a lot of money. And so he decided, oh, sure, I can do that. So then he goes into it, and he is making a lot of money, and he has a lot of contacts. And then suddenly they bring him to one of these satanic rites. And now, you know, this is like a test. This is always the way they do it, by the way. They bring you in for money or fame or whatever. And then at some point, they have to get your collusion. They have to get your complicity to the real reason they're doing this, which is beyond greed and power. And then, you know, he has that experience there where in the interview, he starts crying to see a child sacrificed, and the horror of what he has committed himself to. All right, so he has that human moment, but before that, he had put his humanity on ice, and that's where a very old scientific law kicks in. Is nature abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. In other words, what that means is if you create a vacuum, something will fill it. And so when a human being puts their conscience on ice, their kindness, their compassion, their forgiveness, all the human virtues that we have admired in great souls of our history, then something will come in to fill that vacuum. You may not be aware of it at first, but you will find yourself to be either sort of freezing inside, or you will begin behaving differently. And in that way, I totally believe that entities, first of all, this planet is loaded with entities. I mean, yes, we learned it with the pasteurs who developed, with the microscope for the tiny world. We saw it. Now we have other microscopes that can go even tinier and tinier and tinier. And then we have our telescopes for the big picture. But then there's this other realm that only infrared has access to. And this is a very interesting realm. And I'm going to be talking about it in the Synthetic Biology book, because it's in that realm where these entities are not subject to physical bodies in the same sense of our physical bodies, which are solid matter. But there's, plasma is matter. Plasma is matter, but it's greatly energy. And so how can we don't yet, I mean, we had the Kirlian photography that was able to see auras, light around people pulsating. And we have various devices that are pretty spendy, pretty hard for the common person to have access to. And then we have a media that's completely owned by scientific interests that don't want us to know anything beyond what yesterday had to tell us. So in that way, yes. But if it's a question of, do we have the intelligence to create technologies like this? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. But are these people inspired by something that has filled the vacuum in them? That it's something not subject to a body that has its own agendas for humanity? Oh, yeah, sure. How do you find out the difference? Well, I think the first thing you're going to have to do is get your humanity back. Without that, and I think that's where I really want to push people is, I hear a lot of people blame humanity for this and that. Oh, we this and we that and we this and we that. Well, I don't know who the we is they're talking about, but I'm not like that. I'm not one of the bad guys. Yeah, okay, so I'm stupid sometimes, and I hurt people sometimes. I'm not perfect. I'm not a god. I'm not an angel. But people are going to have to come to terms with what humanity means. And for me, Rudolf Steiner, when he said, I love this, he said that the human being is the religion of the gods. And what he was talking about was, we are the only free will spiritual being attempting to live in dense material bodies on a planet that is pretty much foreign to us, other than nature. And we are here now and then. I think, well, I know, I'm like Carl Jung. When he was interviewed in the 50s on a television show, they asked him if he believed in God. And Jung said, I don't believe, I know. Well, that's kind of how I am about God and about intelligence in the universe, about reincarnation, all these things that for many people might be real stumbling blocks or might even sound evil and whatever. For me, I've had, maybe because I'm the granddaughter of a Romanian gypsy, a Roma, but since childhood, I've had experiences that I would be lying if I said I hadn't had, that have proven to me that this is only one dimension, folks. There are many dimensions. And now the quantum physicists, they know this. Since the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, where, you don't know if it's a particle or a wave, and you try to measure it and suddenly it just kind of, it's gone. And then it shows up over here. You try to measure it. Well, what's that about? That is a constantly changing universe, constantly changing because of the multi-dimensions that are informing each other in, like kind of like three-dimensional chess perhaps, but not nearly that tidy. So in that way, this is a discovery process here. I don't care how many PhDs you have. Once you begin to see that things are constantly on the move here, and then you come to terms with what human means to you. If human means you're an animal, well, maybe, but you're going to have to really think these things through, and you're not going to be able to buy cheap. And because so-and-so said it, or my guru said it, or my minister said it, this authority thing is it's not doing too well. And it's time that we grew up and really did some work with our thinking in order to understand where we stand, so that we at least know that. And that's kind of that's really kind of pushing the entire book, is this. All right, it's Elana now speaking. It's not footnotes necessarily, though there will be footnotes, but it's me coming because I know a lot. I've spent a lifetime studying, and I have things to say, and this is my desideratum in a way, because I really want people to see me, a true human being, who is absolutely dedicated to the future of humanity, that it is still free will, and I don't have some remote AI system penetrating my brain and taking me over without my permission. I am really mad about that, and I do not want that. If somebody wants to be a couch potato for their entire life and stuff their mouth with potato chips and call watching a documentary on TV knowledge, I want them to have the right to do that, even though I don't think it is giving them very much. I think that I want them to have the right to not fill their dance card up and to just sit there and let life run over them. That's their choice. I do not want to be an enhanced human being from someone else's definition of what enhanced means. So that's why I'm working so hard. I mean, I'm really cranking it. I have now for 9 years. And that's why I want this to be the last book. I'll have to do more radio talks and do more Facebook stuff, but I don't mind, as long as, it's time for other people to write. Where are these science guys? Well, how come they're not writing? How come this is the Under An Ionized Sky is the only book out on the space fence? I mean, what?
But Elana, there is no space.
Right. It's all an illusion, and yeah.
Okay, so do you think that this transgender agenda is part of the push towards transhumanism?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where you can look at the water. Here in the States, we learn that there's estrogen in all the city water. So most of the transgender that's going on is boys wanting to be girls. So yeah, there's the estrogen part, and then to me, there's the pulsing the cell phone part, and that can happen in utero. How many women are still with the baby in the uterus are still, propping their arm with their cell phone on their stomach and talking to their friends? And
ultrasound as well is very harmful.
Yes. So, because of the ignorance of the technology, I think that kids are being set up, and then they go to school, and then there's all these routers that are just killing them. They've got headaches, they've got nosebleeds, and they're going to doctors who don't know anything about this technology, have no clue, because in medical school it's not really covered. So so yeah, I think the transgender thing is a sort of non-issue that's been made into an issue by our masters who want us to doubt not just our humanity, but our gender and everything else about ourselves, and look at any direction they point in as being, wow, that sounds great, that's cool. And you know, the ignorance is just astounding to me.
Yeah. And I mean, Hollywood is, I mean, yeah, they are
Yeah, the
doing,
movie's going along right with it. Yeah, those
yeah,
movies.
of course. Look at
Pre-programming.
my cool transgender kid. And he's only 5 years old. We are giving him hormones. He played with dolls for a couple of days. So now we know he's actually a boy. So here's my cool transgender kid. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a human being, not a Gucci bag. So can we maybe leave them alone and just be kids?
Well, I mean, you'd have to take away this technology, because this technology is doing subliminals. I'm telling you, it's illegal here to do subliminals, but does that matter? It doesn't matter here. We don't live by law here in America anymore. Yeah, okay, so I'm still driving on the right side of the road, and you know, we're not having traffic accidents too much for that. But just about everything else is sort of up for grabs, and if it's not up for grabs, it's being run by criminals. So so yeah, I don't know what I would do if I had to deal with it in my personal life. I would have always you know, and I was a high school teacher years ago, and I didn't care what my students wore, or I wouldn't allow cussing in the classroom, but I wouldn't care if they were gay or straight or wore, you know, FU on their pants or whatever. I didn't really care, as long as they could think and defend their what they were saying. That was my concern. I would be the same today if I were still teaching and it were a LGBT, transgender, whatever. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's ignorance of the public about what's going on. And those who should be informing us simply are not informing us and are lying.
Yeah, and I think that is, I mean, most people do not really care what you do between the sheets, as long as you are not raping somebody and you are not abusing animals or children. So, but as soon as you are pointing this out, that this insane push towards transgenderism, that there is something wrong, then out of the blue, you are, I don't know,
being screamed at.
Yeah, hardcore right-winger, Nazi, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But that's the programming. That there you're getting a good look at the programming.
Yeah.
And that's happening in a variety of ways. Yes, it's happening through the mainstream media. It's happening through pre-programming of movies. It's happening through the cool singing stars on MTV or whatever it is. It's happening, but the ones I'm concerned about are the subliminals, and that start with the Walt Disney type of cartoons children are watching. They are being programmed. I'm telling you, you can't hear it, but they can, and their subconscious can. And the cell phones. We need to really study these technologies and find the good information and really take a good look at them, and then take control. Parents need to take control over those technologies. Yep.
Yeah. Would you say that this push for bioengineering is, yeah, let's say the final step to lock us down and control us completely in their view?
Well, I think so. I mean, the vaccinations are part of it, in that they can, because basically what a vaccination is they tell you what they're vaccinating your child with, if it's an MMR or whatever it is. But what you're not being told is what's being piggybacked on that vaccine and gone into your child. So in my mind, I would love to know that. And I'm hoping maybe someday somebody will be a whistleblower and will tell us some of the truth about what is being piggybacked in those vaccinations. Because that's where you can see that the reason there's so many now is they're programming the kids right away. The ones that they can't get to through the uterus. And programming can happen through the uterus. I mean, you know, these people that have the cell phone, I mean, it's a nightmare to me. I try not to look because I don't want to go up and, you know, take that on. There's such a deep sleep going on with people now. And part of that is from the pulsing of the cell phone. It's putting people to sleep. So they start with the babies, and then it goes to the schools, and you know, all those routers there, and this huge concentration on computers from kindergarten on. It's ridiculous. That's why I was a Waldorf teacher, a Rudolf Steiner teacher, was so children could have an actual childhood and play and have music and art and all those things, you know, before they had to be hit in the face with the computer world. So I think that this will be it. There may be some glitches, but, you know, with people like me, what are they going to do with those of us who are conscious? Because consciousness is really strong in some people. And especially if you've fortified your consciousness with real knowledge of the technology. And that's of course what I'm trying to drive home to people too. You know, I guess my main comfort is that when I die, I'm going to take with me everything I've got here. I've been able to sustain real knowledge. I'm going to take that with me. And then when I come back, I'm really gonna slam these guys. That's like my comfort. That's my comfort zone. Is I'll get them someday. It's not going to happen now because everything is moving so fast, and I am not the person that I need to be to do that. But I will be next time.
Yeah. So how can we strengthen our consciousness? Because we know that it is important, but I guess let's say maybe we could weaponize it against this.
Well, yeah, strengthen it. I think strengthen is a better word, less loaded. But yes, okay, so the immune system, though it's biological, don't underestimate it. I think recently we've seen a lot of articles about people's biome systems not working in the gut. And truthfully, if you look at the gut and you see how the intestines are laid out, and you look at the brain, it's very similar. Now we find out that how the biome goes is how the brain goes, okay? So let's be clear, the immune system is the first thing. But in order to do that, people are going to have to look at their lifestyle. And many people in Western society are very attached to their habits. And the habits are hard to change the older you get. I constantly try to change my habits just to make sure that I'm still flexible. You know, and then I might go back to it later, but it might be a little adjusted. And so it's not a big deal to me, but I've worked on that my whole life to make sure I don't get fixed. But to say to someone, hey, you know, I think if you want your lungs to work better in the winter, don't eat dairy and meat. And then they go, what? No meat, no whatever. It's like, what did I just say to, you know, I'm going to kill you or something? I mean, you know, this is just a food. It's a food. No, it's much more to these people. It's a habit, and it's entrenched, and their cells are made of it. And they don't want to believe that the lungs and animal products don't necessarily get along very well all the time, particularly in winter. So you look at that, or I've told people at talks I've given, you know, do what I do. Years ago, I had a television smashing party. It was fantastic. I think we smashed 4 TVs, and we felt so much better after we did. And then I tell them I've never owned a television, which I haven't. And they're like, oh, but I have to watch blah, blah, blah on Tuesday nights. I mean, no. Really? Really? Why?
Yeah,
Why
it almost sounds as if somebody is going to die if he or she cannot watch it.
Well, and that's the power of television for sure, but of habit. And so first is the lifestyle needs to be looked at. Second of all, the immune system. Only eat the foods and live the way the immune system is empowered. And then you've got to examine in your dwelling and how you live what your relationship with electromagnetics is. And now you're going to have to do a bit of studying, and maybe even get someone over to your house that has those fancy devices, that the Gauss meters, et cetera, that can measure the radiation going through your home, especially in your bedroom. And then you're going to have to look at how you sleep. Are you sleeping on a bed that has metal in it? Well, then it's like an antenna. Probably not what you want to be sleeping on. And there are all kinds of these things, all kinds of little nuanced things that don't seem very important alone, but put together, they are weakening people, and we can make them strengthen. These are the easy parts. Now we get to the part of consciousness where we notice that we don't read anymore. We'd rather watch a video. We'd rather watch a so-called documentary. The reason I'm not a big documentary fan is usually the director is pushing you in a certain direction. I much prefer a book. Yes, this person is pushing me in a certain direction, but I can go back. It's a much cooler medium, as Marshall McLuhan would have said. It's a cooler medium, the book. So I can go back a few pages and see what he said before and think about it and da-da-da-da-da. But now people don't want to read. One, we can go and, you know, try to kill their 3rd or 4th grade teacher who made them read or made them do things, and now they hate it. They hate really learning. They hate reading. It's too slow. By the time they're reading at night after a hard day's work or whatever, they're going to sleep. So, you know, I think that to learn without reading is a very bad idea, because you will not really do the work you need to really learn. I read a lot, and of course I do. In order to write, you have to read a lot. That's something that a lot of young writers don't realize. You got to do a lot of reading if you're going to be a writer. So what I'm doing now, I have a kind of a clever idea. We'll see how it pans out. So far, I only have 2 people who are pursuing it. One is in California, one's here. And that is to establish a study group and take my Under an Ionized Sky, just because it's the only book written on this stuff yet, not because it's mine, and establish a reading group and read aloud for an hour and a half, once every week or 2 weeks, and stop and discuss it, ask questions, give comments, but everything has to be about what's being read, and get your mind into a certain frequency, the frequency of the concepts that I'm talking about. That's how it works. if you're reading about the chemical trails and the relationship to the ionospheric heaters, you're reading about a concept and how the concept works. And now you're all reading, just picture it, you're all reading the same thing. And now you're all in the same zone. You're all feeling what it feels like to be together and doing work and not being alone, trying to struggle to stay awake to read a couple of paragraphs in a book that's with heavy concepts, difficult concepts, but written for laymen, not written for PhDs. So these two groups are going now. They're really having success. They're understanding better because they're doing it together. I know you've heard that where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. That idea, which many people think Christians own, no, this is a very old concept that if you're doing it with some people, you'll probably do better with them because
it amplifies it.
You're leaning on each other. Yeah, and so I'm trying that, and the carrot in front of the horse is you're in the same frequency, and it's the frequency that the guys who are turning these concepts into weapons, it's the same frequency they get into when they study the stuff. So you're not in an alpha wave, you're not in a delta wave. You're in a certain frequency of non-physical thought. Not, oh, I have to stop and get a quart of milk and take home. Not that kind of thought. That's a physical thought. But one where you're analyzing a concept and you're attempting to make a mental picture of how this works between the chemical trails and the ionospheric heater hitting the ionosphere. And, you're all in this together. So this is a way I'm pursuing to see if it will strengthen people's confidence in themselves to be able to really grip these concepts and really be able to create a picture of it in your mind of how it works. That's what I'm working on. Because I don't mean where we're all going to get together and meditate at 11 a.m. on blah, blah, blah for world peace. No, that's a delta frequency, very low frequency, a very pleasant frequency, nothing wrong with it. But we need the one that has the most juice. And so that's what I'm attempting to do. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, but that takes a lot of discipline.
Yes, discipline. I mean, I don't know about a lot of discipline. The idea is they read as much as they can before they come to the group of the reading that they're up to then. And then they read at the group, same thing, same reading. And then they go home and they go over whatever they read one more time, but cursorily, just sort of see what we read and see what they recall. And if they have any interesting insights or questions, they jot them down for the next time.
Yeah, it's not that it's not doable, but I guess for a lot of people that would be a challenge.
Well, they'd have to, they have to commit.
Yeah,
I think commit is the word you want. Yeah. And commitment, we're also isolated now.
Yeah.
We're with our computer and, getting in the car on a cold winter night and driving over to so-and-so's house to do this and have a cup of tea, it's a commitment.
Yeah, but it's, I had, do you know Stefan Verstappen?
I don't think so.
I had him on and he was talking about building communities, that would be a good idea to escape the gulags, the technocratic gulags. And he said that people suffer so much from depression that is because they are so isolated, and that they found out that even once or every 2 weeks meeting people over a coffee and having talks and getting normal human interaction going, that their depressions got better.
Gee, imagine that. It's kind of like those surveys they did. Research says that breast milk is better for you than formula milk. It's like, yeah. Excuse me, how many millions were spent on that?
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to say about this idea, just it's not just about getting together and doing it together, but I don't think people understand what concepts are. I know that I didn't before I studied Rudolf Steiner, before I went into Steiner land, as I call it, and learned his way of looking at thinking, concepts, mental pictures, perceptions, conception. A concept is like Plato said it was. I don't know if you remember Plato, but he said that concepts are like archetypes of how something is. It's form. And that precedes the existence of its material counterpart, precedes it. And it's in a certain dimension. It's not created up here. It's in a certain dimension that is going on simultaneous with our dimension, one of those multitudinal direct dimensions. And with our thinking, and you have to have some will in the thinking, it has to be kind of strong, not just, oh, peace and light. No, it has to have some
punch,
grabbing ability, right? So then you're reading a concept, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Take something simple like Pythagorean theorem. You know, we all know that, oh yeah, that's the Pythagorean theorem, you know, and it's in that dimension, it's there, and you can send your thinking, and right away you've got a picture now of the triangle, and you're seeing the hypotenuse is twice the this and that, and you grab that concept, and now say you're all thinking about that concept. I mean, you're in a zone together, and that's what I want people to get excited about again, is your thoughts. They're happening on what is known as a scalar dimension. They're not happening here. They're not in 3D here, time. No. Those thoughts are not taking place here. They're in your body that's here, but the thought itself is taking place in another dimension, and you're getting it. You're feeling your way around it. You're experiencing it. That's what a concept is. And that is it's like a God-given gift to be able to conceptualize. And I think that our highest scientists, they all have apocryphal stories about that. Einstein talks about how, you know, he fell asleep in his office and he found himself riding on a comet. He was straddling a comet between his legs when he realized, you know, his theorem. You know, I can't remember his name, Kukuli or something, the first chemist, you know, he dreamed that an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. And he woke up from the dream and realized the concept of benzene. So, you know, you have this mystical thing called a concept that we just kind of, oh yeah, it's a concept. It's boring. You know, I mean, it's like, is that your yardstick for all of life, that it's boring? Well, you must be doing something wrong if you think that's boring. And so I'm just trying to get people to really look at thinking as something they can do. They don't have to wait to see what Elana says. They can think and figure things out. You know, what is wrong with that? What is going on with people that they're so dull? I mean, I can't think of one person in my town that I would want to have an hour conversation with. Not one. Okay, yeah, I'm really smart. Okay, yeah. And I'm into science. Yeah, okay. But I could talk with someone about something. We don't have to talk about science. We don't have to talk about this. But I cannot think of one person. I think that's tragic.
Hmm. Yeah, but what goes along with it is that the attention span is very short these days.
Same thing. Same thing. No will. Weak will. That's years of television watching, sitting in front of the boob tube, and you're in alpha wave, which is basically either a state for meditation, if you really were meditating, or it's a baby state. It's just a little goo goo gaga kind of thing. It's not really active. And that's, you know, a lifetime of that makes you, yeah, not very interesting. I've never owned a television. Why would I? I don't want to be dumbed down. I'm interested in getting even sharper and understanding things so that I can share with people what I have to share if I need to. Yeah, I really, it's all sort of beyond my pay grade, I think, as we say here. I don't really understand how people could have fallen for such a ruse. Like, you know, yeah, I love this program.
It's the temple of
What's that have to do with
convenience.
anything? Huh?
It's the temple of convenience.
Yes, convenience and comfort. And it's called entitlement. You know, entitlement. I'm from a laboring class. My mother's parents were factory workers from Romania. My father's parents were farmers. You know, a hard day's work was the ethos of both sides of the family. And I'm, you know, I like doing both. I like using my head, and I also, you know, used to use my hands and my body a lot. So anyway, it's, again, that's all part of the lifestyle thing, isn't it? The lifestyle question. Everything rotates on what people come up with, or if they just despair, oh, well, you know, I'll just go to the doctor and I'll just have chemo. What happened to you? Yeah, I really don't get it.
Yeah, and the doctor usually, yeah, he has
Knows
something.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, yeah, there
Well,
is
it's the Western model is the problem, the allopathic model. It's never causal. It's always symptomatic. And you know, and suppressing symptoms, that seems to be their idea of health. I don't know about that. Because the problem with suppressing this symptom is, oh, next month it's going to be over here. Then we're going to have to suppress that one. Then it's going to be over here, and, you know, no, it doesn't work.
Are you still symptomatic? No? Okay, back to work. Back to the rat race.
Yeah, or pop a pill and keep going to your 40-hour-week job. Yeah, it's not working. Americans, I don't know about in Germany, but in America, the health has never been worse. This is the worst I've ever seen it in Americans. Oh, everybody's overweight.
Ah, okay.
And everybody's sick, and it's like going to the doctor is like going to a priest or something, preparing for the last rites or something. I don't know. It's very sad.
Yeah. You know, the first time that I was in the United States was in 1980. And even then, I was surprised how many, and I mean extremely fat people there were.
Yes. Well, and you know how that works is, you probably know now, the junk food, but it's not the quantity that's doing it. It's the quality.
Yeah.
And it is, they had the chemicals then in the junk food, but now they've got it down to a real science. And they're just creating whole lineages of fat people who, have very low self-esteem and who are addicted to greasy, inferior foods and go to these restaurants. There are lots of these restaurants that, feed you that kind of food. And it's really tragic. I just love it.
The size of the portions, that was also
Right. No, entitled people
wow.
don't exercise. No, it's not just exercise. I think these people could exercise, and I still don't think they'd lose much weight. No. This is like, this is what's known as epigenetics. It's being inherited generation by generation now. So anyway, I just want people to put up a good fight. People keep saying to me, "Oh, Elana, how do we stop them? We can stop these chemical trails. Stop this, stop that." I have no idea. I don't think that's possible, knowing that what I do about the space age and how desperately they want that. So what I can do is, just try to get hold of how this transhumanist shift is working. And we're already in it now. I mean, you see those kids walking down the street,
Yeah, and you and many other people, we are still in the educational stages.
What do you mean?
Yeah, that a lot of people still haven't caught up with anything that you explained tonight.
That's right. Yeah, it's true. And that, it's there. I mean, there's still people, I have to, not laugh at them, but there are still people who send me messaging about how it's not a contrail in the sky. It's like, that is so far in my past. Yeah. And I've dealt that big blows in the first book. Like, it's dead in the water. And then people don't want to read, you see. They want me to tell them. They don't want to do any research. They want to test what I say against what so-and-so said. And there's no will in people. That's the thing I'm saying, is they don't understand that they need to get off their duff and pursue this. Yeah. for their own benefit. And I don't mean just that they will get healthier that way, but this sort of muling babiness of the American, and I won't speak for European.
It's the same here in Europe.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and there's nothing I can really do for these people.
Yeah.
And so I just plow onward, and I have quite a wonderful group on my closed Facebook site. It's called Elana Freeland, Under An Ionized Sky. And the people I've attracted, there's about 4,000 in this site, but there's maybe a good 100 people who are real researchers and constantly putting up intelligent things about the technology, about the things the technology is connected to. Because I've got things up on that site regarding the vaccinations, the GMOs, the electromagnetics, all those things have to do with the space fence as far as I'm concerned. And, to really have a site where I have no problem with trolls. I love it. I love it. Because it's a closed site. And, and I'm ruthless. I go to someone's site who has asked to be a member. I look at their site. If it's just all babies and kitties and lovely scenes from the family vacation, they're not going to make it into that site because they need to go through some more stuff in order to be able to come there where they can participate. I don't want just people reading other people's stuff. I want them participating. And so that is good. And then I have a site called elanafreeland.com, which is, I hardly ever have time to go to it, but it's run by my web mistress. And that's good. That's everything about all the books I've written, because I haven't just written on the chemtrails, and I've written the Sub Rosa America series, and it's a great site. It's a fun site. It's got lots and lots of stuff on it. So those are going on, and then writing this book, and then I want to do some other stuff after this book. But I'm very excited. I'm sort of buried in paper right now, but very excited to explain some concepts that people might actually be able to use, especially people who think they don't like science. If they understood what it really is, but they haven't been allowed to, their high school science teacher probably didn't know what they were doing. You know, I'm hoping that I can change some minds, that they'll be interested in learning about this technology, because we're living in a technological era. I mean, why wouldn't you want to learn the very era you chose to be born in? But a lot of people don't think they chose anything. Well, I know they chose to be here, and I chose to be here. I am thrilled. I mean, could I think of a better war to fight? I mean, I'm a warrior. I've always been a warrior, many, many lifetimes warrior. And I love this stuff. I mean, just, you know, give me a juicy enemy so that I can really find the way to meet them. And for me, I've decided it's through the thinking, because most people just want to feel their way through life. They just want to emote. But I ain't going to do nothing with these guys that are in charge of this program. But real thinking, real effort, real resistance through the spiritual activity of thinking, oh yeah, we got something there.
Yeah. Do you already have a title for your book?
Well, I have one that I'm kind of fond of. It's wait, I have to read it to you. Wait, hold on. I actually kind of believe in it because I woke up at 4 in the morning with it in my mind.
Okay.
Those are always good. Okay. Transhumanist, Lockstep, Geoengineering, and the Wireless Nightmare of Nanotechnology, Targeting, and Synthetic Biology.
That's a very short one.
I never do short titles.
Yeah, I know.
But the first part is short. Transhumanist, Lockstep.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Wireless Nightmare. I can remember.
Yeah, it is. Once I explain it to you, how you're locked into a mesh now, right now, this moment, you are completely enmeshed in a wireless particle mesh that Elon Musk talks about. And you cannot get out of it. I mean, yeah, if you go to a rural area, it'll have there'll be pockets which are not enmeshed entirely, but once they get those satellites going, it's all enmeshed. That's the way they want it.
Yeah. We little guinea pigs.
Yes, it's always. I'm always just a barrel of laughs, aren't I?
Yeah, we better get our act together.
Yes, that's really what I'm saying. I don't have any sympathy anymore. I really don't. I think people are lazy. I think they want it easy. Yeah. And that's part of the entitlement disease. I mean, you know, the West has been standing on the shoulders of the rest of the world for thousands of years. And it's time we got busy, because now it's coming home to roost, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think even there, you know, then, oh, okay, Elana says this, but on CNN, they told me this and that, nothing to worry about. And then I read in the New York Times, that there's nothing to worry about. They explained it very well. So once again, convenience wins. You know, I don't have to challenge my comfort zone, what I believed all along.
But see, that there is the slippery slope we were talking about earlier of giving up your humanity.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of it. The slippery slope, boy. If you don't care that your human brothers and sisters are suffering, I mean, all I have to do to care is think of the. I think I'm being very kind here, but I think it's 1.5 million Americans alone are being targeted by government-owned electromagnetic directed energy weapons in their homes, in their workplaces, on the street, and they are suffering. This is the gulag. This is the concentration camp on the move. This is not a place that you go to. They bring it to you wherever you are, and it is hell on earth. And that's all it takes for me is to remember them, and I'm ready to go at it again.
Yeah, and it's not only this I don't experience this so-called voice of God, voice to skull, but I know that sometimes they broadcast into your dreams. And
yes,
these dreams are very, very different.
You've had that experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will not talk about it here, what it was about. I can tell you that off camera, but I know when I wake up if that was a broadcast or not. And
well, I'm glad to hear you say that, just to admit that there are things going on. They are experimenting. A lot of it is experimentation, and a lot of it is training new agents in how to torture people in their own homes. And this is, you know, this bothers me. I can still sleep, but I remember Rudolf Steiner writing somewhere that, you know, the day will come when we will not be able to sleep knowing someone somewhere is suffering. Now, to me, that's true morality. See, where you are so connected to your brothers and sisters in humanity that that it will not leave you alone that they are suffering. So that idea is sort of the direction to go if people say, well, a human is just a higher animal. No, sorry about that. That's not quite how it works. That's the disinformation campaign that you've been subjected to. And that's actually part, I'm glad that I brought that up. That's part of the lifestyle thing, is people they're going to have to face what's been conditioned in me. Where did I get that whole mindset? You know, was it when I was a kid? Did I get it from church? Did I get it from TV? Did I get it from my parents? You know, and decide if you as an adult want to persist in that, because you have a choice. You don't have to keep doing something just because you were conditioned in it, but you have to know it was conditioning. You have to know that so that you can get hold of it, get rid of it. Yeah, that's part of the lifestyle thing, which is it's not easy to really take up your habits and decide for other things and then set yourself on a new track. But sometimes that's exactly what we need. We need a challenge. We need something that is a dream, like Martin Luther King used to talk about. We need something that is more than just convenience and, you know, the usual comfort zone thing and security. They're shoving security down our throats all the time. Got to be safe, got to be safe, got to be safe. Yeah, they're making a fortune off of weapons because we now feel endangered that they've made us feel. Right?
Yeah. Disaster capitalism and surveillance capitalism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just noticed your top is sparkly.
Yes, yes, it is. But funny enough, we had some really, really hot days. And now for the last 5, 6 days, it's a little bit chilly for July, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, same here. It's a winter out today. That's geoengineering for you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes when I mention to other people we don't have any normal weather anymore, they look at me like, I don't know, I have pink slime coming out of my nose or something.
Well, and there's that where humans are, we're very flexible and we can get used to things even if they're not good things,
Mm.
right? Got to
Yeah.
watch that slippery slope.
Elana, wonderful talk as usual. What am I doing here?
Right, right. Are we living intentionally or are we living accidentally?
Yeah.
I'm living intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very satisfying.
I think a lot of people are so worn down. A part of that has, of course, to do with the circumstances that sometimes I have the impression they're just happy they make it through somehow.
Right, but I think that I could also say if I had a 15-minute conversation with those people and heard a few details, I could say that they're not reaching deep enough inside, really not reaching in there.
Yeah.
We need to remember what we wanted to do when we came here. Everyone came here to do something. I don't mean that, you came here to be a king or to be rich or any of that. It's what quality did you come here for? What are you working on as a soul? If you don't look at life through spiritual eyes, you're not understanding what's going on here.
Yeah.
You've got to have that. You've got to have that. A materialist is miserable and will have no energy.
Yeah.
Unless they want, they're going for greed and they want money and position and all that. Then they can get some juice from that for a while. But once that goes.
And usually you can figure that out by yourself. If you're willing to do that, because there are a lot of people out there who are making a lot of money. Find out what your true purpose is.
Well, I wouldn't go to any of those people, first of all, unless I met them on a bus,
Yeah.
maybe like if serendipity is in charge, I might trust that to see what they had in mind. But no, I think it's just a good old fashioned reaching in there and seeing what's left and working with it and bringing it back, because we're each responsible for our life.
Yeah.
I remember the end of a prayer. I can't remember the rest of the prayer, but the end is, I am your life, but if you will not name me, seal up your soul with tears and never blame me. Not bad.
Wonderful final words, Elana.
Yes, it's always a pleasure, always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So everybody, that was Night Flight for today. I hope everybody got a little bit food for thought. And we all see you next time. Until then, bye-bye. Take good care of yourself.